picking up the pace. More people can now qualify for the vaccine in Colorado.
It would be nice to get back to some sense of normalcy.
We'll tell you when, where, and how to reserve your spot in line.
More money between stimulus checks, child tax credits, and the minimum wage debate. We're tracking several issues that could hit you right in the bank account.
And round two. The second impeachment trial of former President Trump begins in earnest tomorrow. Republicans already want it thrown out.
It's just partisan politics under a different name.
The faster the vaccinations happen, the faster life can return to normal. And tonight, Colorado leaders are determined to get us back to as close to normal as quickly as possible.
Teachers and people over the age of 65 became eligible for a vaccine today. Many have already scheduled a first appointment.
And this is an unprecedented public health effort.
Denver7's Gary Brode is live tonight to walk us through the evolving process and the pitfalls. Gary?
Yeah, well, I did talk to the president of the Colorado Education Association, and she tells me not a lot of educators received their vaccine today, but expects that to change as the week goes on and into the next couple of weeks as well. I did speak to one teacher who received his shot today. He calls it a relief.
It's been a long time coming.
Chris Landis is a fifth grade teacher at Colfax Elementary. He's also one of the first educators around the state to receive the COVID-19 vaccinations as part of the 1B2 group.
And just knowing that there's a lot of folks within our school community who don't have access to the vaccine yet is definitely something that's like on my mind.
Landis says his job has been stressful since they went back to in-person learning last month.
Elementary schoolers don't do a great job of understanding how far 6 feet is, so that's been really scary, I think.
Parking lot go! It's that concern that drove these educators to make a mad rush over the weekend after receiving a text that there was an extra 200 vaccines available.
It just speaks to how anxious educators are to get vaccinated. I mean, you know, they received a text message and people were literally running to their cars, running from their cars to be one of those 200 to get in line.
Amy Baca-Ollard is the president of the Colorado Education Association. She expects the nearly 100,000 educators across the state to be vaccinated evenly over the next 3 weeks.
I think there's a lot of excitement, but also just a lot of anxious energy. You know, there's still a lot of people who don't know when they will get their appointment, so they're waiting patiently to see if they get that text message or that phone call.
I don't really know how we can get too much back to normal.
Amy DeFusco is an early childhood educator. She received her first round of the vaccine January 29th as part of the first 1B group. Like Landis, she's still concerned despite being closer to the second round of the vaccine.
I am still a little apprehensive. You know, I have a couple more weeks before I'm eligible for my second dose. And what happens if I'm exposed or, you know, actually contract the virus between now and then?
I did speak with the representatives of some of the major hospitals around the state. They say that some of them did start to vaccinate that 1B2 group today. Meanwhile, others worked on a plan and they expect to begin tomorrow. Reporting live in Denver, Gary Brode, Denver7.
Yeah, we're making progress. Thank you, Gary. And we are hearing more experts come forward to say they believe the COVID vaccine will be something you get annually, like a flu shot. Their concern is the increasing number of COVID variants. Dozens of variant cases have been identified here in Colorado, and the actual number is really pretty hard to estimate. The state only tests a small number of COVID samples, and many variants can be transmitted more easily than others. They may also be more resistant to the current vaccines, meaning you would need to get an updated vaccine each year for full protection.
And 10% of the U.S. population has now received its first shot, including millions of people in nursing homes. The next phase of the effort is likely to include NFL stadiums. President Biden took a virtual tour of a large-scale COVID-19 vaccination site at the NFL stadium in Arizona today. The league said it plans to offer all of its stadium as vaccination sites, including our Empower Field. And President Biden's team remains focused on the economy today. 90% of the country believes we need another stimulus package, and fewer than half want to see Democrats go it alone. Congressional Democrats can pass a $1.9 trillion stimulus bill alone. They are continuing to negotiate with the Republicans, but the president has made it clear he's not going to budge on certain things.
You've said you're not compromising on the $1,400 checks.
Child tax credits may expand as part of these stimulus negotiations. And today, Democrats announced a plan to expand the child tax credit. The big change, instead of waiting until tax season to get the money, the IRS would start sending monthly payments to qualifying parents. If this is approved, it would be for parents making less than $75,000 individually or $150,000 combined. That monthly payment would be up to $300 per child.
And the Congressional Budget Office said today that the Democrat plan to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour could lift nearly 1 million people out of poverty. It could also kill more than 1 million jobs in the process. Denver7's Patrick Perez reports on this difficult balance.
$15 an hour can go a long way.
Having a savings account, going on vacation, being able to afford health care.
Just ask John Alvarez. He's a former restaurant worker, now advocating for a higher minimum wage on behalf of the nonprofit One Fair Wage.
We wear so many hats that are so important that safeguard the restaurant and the business, but we aren't paid enough to do all those things.
Under the Democrats' plan, the federal minimum wage would gradually go up from $7.25 to $15 by 2025, even for tipped employees. But DU professor of finance, Dr. Mac Klaus, says that could come at a cost.
They've either got to pass that increased cost in terms of higher prices for their goods and services, or they just can't have as many employees.
Colorado is already ahead of the curve. Our minimum wage is $12.32 an hour. It goes up each year to account for the cost of living. But if the Democrat plan passes, the federal minimum wage would pass Colorado's by mid-2023. By then, the economy may be in a better position to absorb the change.
If the economy is going stronger, then the businesses can afford to share some of that increased wealth.
John knows he's fighting an uphill battle, but he says no matter what, something needs to change.
I don't think that there should be any American that works 40 hours a week that can't afford to pay his bills. I think that is un-American.
In Denver, I'm Patrick Perez, Denver7.
Today, Republicans and Democrats agreed on the rules for former President Trump's second impeachment trial.
Both sides have agreed to a strict timeline in order to make sure the trial proceeds in a timely fashion. Opening arguments are tomorrow. Both sides will discuss constitutionality, and then the Senate will vote on whether they have the jurisdiction to convict a former president. And then each side gets a maximum of 2 days to make their case. That could be followed by a couple of days' worth of additional questioning. Ultimately, 2/3 of the Senate must vote to impeach.
All parties have agreed to a structure that will ensure a fair and honest Senate impeachment trial of the former president.
In a pretrial brief today, Trump's team laid out their case, claiming the impeachment is unconstitutional and simply an act of political theater. They have asked this case to be thrown out. The 9 Democratic House impeachment managers, including 2 from here in Colorado, by the way, say this case has to be heard. They accuse the former president of inciting violence with his rhetoric.
Today, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office announced it is calling off the ground search for this man, Josh Hall. The 27-year-old hiker was reported missing on Wednesday. His car was later found at the Hesse trailhead near Nederland. And since Wednesday, about 70 people have been involved in the search despite severe weather. Hall has not been found.
Well, Commerce City police say William Schwett confessed to shooting at a burglary suspect earlier this morning. One of them died. Police say there were 3 people involved in the initial burglary at a grocery store near Highway 76 and 104th Avenue. Now, Schwett reportedly saw the burglary in progress and shot at the suspects. 1 was killed, another ran, the 3rd has been caught and identified as a minor, by the way. Schwett is being held tonight on suspicion of murder.
There is a huge temperature contrast across the state. I'll let you know when the coldest air is going to reach Denver.
Plus, look at how all that texting might be impacting your mental health.
And you'll meet 16 young women breaking into a boys-only club.
It's probably one of my biggest accomplishments in my life.